Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Media tycoon Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison after being convicted of colluding with foreign forces and publishing seditious material. The verdict ends Hong Kong's largest national security case and fuels global concern over Beijing's curbs on the city's freedoms. China says the sentence for Jimmy Lai is legitimate and lawful, insisting the case upholds the rule of law. The European Union, the UN and press freedom groups condemn the ruling, calling for Lai's immediate release and warning it undermines press freedom in Hong Kong. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's communications director Tim Allen resigns amid turmoil in his top team. The exit follows the Chief of Staff's quit after controversy surrounding a UK ambassadorial appointment. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calls on Iranians to show resolve ahead of the anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. He says national strength lies in the will of the people, urging unity against foreign pressure. The Prince and Princess of Wales say they are deeply concerned by newly released documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Kensington Palace says their focus remains on the victims as renewed scrutiny falls on figures tied to the late financier. Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi says the country will steadfastly protect its territorial waters and airspace. Speaking after a landslide election win, she pledges to strengthen defences and stresses self-reliance on national security. Russian drones and missiles strike cities across Ukraine, killing at least 4 people, according to regional officials. Ukraine says it shoots down over 100 drones amid ongoing war and parallel diplomatic talks. Human Rights Watch says an apparent Nigerian military drone strike kills at least 17 civilians in western Niger. The group says at least 13 others are injured when the strike hits a crowded market near Burkina Faso. We start our hour in the UK, and the government has officially expanded the British National Overseas Visa Scheme, a move prompted by the continuing deterioration of rights and freedoms in Hong Kong and the specific 20-year prison sentencing of pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai. Adult children of BNO status holders who were born between July the 1st, 1979 and June the 30th of 1977, under 18 at the time of the handover, can now apply for the visa independently of their parents. The update resolves an unfair discrepancy that previously allowed some younger children to resettle with their families, while older siblings were excluded due to the age at the time of the 1977 handover. Since the original scheme launched in 2021, over 230,000 visas have been granted, with nearly 170,000 individuals already having moved to the United Kingdom. We now are going to move on to our next story. During his diplomatic visit to Beijing in late January of this year, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer had addressed the case of pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai, who is serving a 20-year sentence under Hong Kong's national security law. Starmer confirmed that he had raised Lai's case with Chinese President Xi Jinping alongside concerns about human rights violations, including China's treatment of Uyghurs. When questioned on the intensity of his approach, Starmer stated that he had raised the issues and highlighted the importance of maintaining a balanced dialogue with China. Lai, a British national since 1996, has become a symbol of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement, and Starmer's comments reflect the ongoing pressure on the UK government to address human rights concerns with China. This comes as Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison, a landmark case in Hong Kong. The city, of course, which is supposed to operate under the one nation, two systems rule until 2047. This ruling undermines that in a breakthrough for Hong Kong, the city, which, of course, now many actors, including the United Kingdom, see this law undermined. Jimmy Lai, a British national, has been sentenced for 20 years. Starmer, of course, has just visited China, balancing and walking that diplomatic tightrope, citing China as a national security threat, but of course still maintaining those trade ties with the country. Jimmy Lai, a huge name and a self-made billionaire who has now been sentenced to 20 years in prison. Joining us now is Shyam Batra. He's a British politician and political commentator. He joins us live from London. Shyam, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Of course, Keir Starmer, when he visited China, he said he raised Jimmy Lai as an issue. Lai, of course, a British citizen, has now been sentenced to 20 years in a landmark ruling under a Hong Kong court. Hong Kong, of course, supposed to be under this two systems, one country mandate, something that is now said to be undermined by this ruling. What is your thoughts on the UK's response to it now that Lai will be imprisoned in Hong Kong for 20 years?
Wow, it's a quite a bit of good, interesting news today, isn't it? I mean, I've not seen something like this happen for quite a long time, but the take up on it it widens. What does it now do to the embassy? And after his event that Starmer went to China as well, I mean, this has just come out of the blue. It's a bolt out of the blue, isn't it? But I mean, the revelations, the international headlines have just been steaming out really about this situation. But to Keir Starmer's comments on Jimmy Lai and new revelations about Prince Andrew, they're all going to come out. This, I assume, is all coming out from most probably the Epstein files. I'm not quite sure at the moment.
And of course, this is a landmark ruling, Shyam. Hong Kong handed over by Britain to China a few years ago now. Press freedom under debate, but does this solidify that Hong Kong now doesn't adhere to that one party, one country, two systems rule that it is supposed to follow until 2047? What does it say about press freedoms in Hong Kong?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure about how Hong Kong operates in its press freedom. We certainly know what happens here in the UK. That we can't really say as much as we want to say. But I assume with what's going on right now, I mean, I've just been reading also just before you came on about the UK is now expanding the Hong Kong visa scheme amid right concerns as well. So I don't think the government is playing too much heavy-handed on the situation on Jimmy, what's happened. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, this is how the cards are being played out. I mean, we've still got lots of revelations coming out from the Epstein files, which just doesn't cover the UK. It covers a whole heap of places all around the world, including, I believe that a lot of people in Hong Kong have also been summoned to speak about the Epstein stuff. But going on to our country and the UK, I mean, we are expanding our visa scheme with them now. So I assume that the Hong Kong people, the government is deteriorating their civil rights in terms of political rights in freedom of speech. We have the new Chinese New Year coming in, which I thought things would have created more of an ambience. But you've got to remember now that China runs Hong Kong, not Britain.
Indeed. It's an interesting development. Shyam, do stay with us as we turn on to another scandal topping the headlines in the United Kingdom. And Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew and the younger brother of King Charles, has shared official British trade documents with Jeffrey Epstein in 2010, leaking information to the late sex offender from his role as a government envoy through emails. Andrew has faced years of scrutiny over his friendship with Epstein, a relationship that has cost him his role in the royal family, titles and his home. He has always denied any wrongdoing and not responded to requests for comment since the latest release of Epstein files. In the latest batch of the files released in the United States, the emails have shown that Andrew has forwarded to Epstein reports about Vietnam, Singapore and other countries which he had been sent in relation to the trip he made in official capacity. We move on to a related development next, and King Charles has again faced heckling during a visit to Clitheroe train station in Lancashire over his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's link to Epstein. As the King greeted members of the public, one person shouted questions about how long he had known about Andrew's association, drawing boos from the crowd. The incident follows the latest release of the Epstein files by the US Department of Justice, which includes fresh allegations against Andrew. Meanwhile, Prince William and Kate say they are deeply concerned, while the palace has earlier stripped Andrew of his remaining royal titles. Shayan Batra joins us once again. Of course, the fallout does not stop for Andrew as these over 3 million batch of files continues to be sieved through. I want to focus on the King, Charles, and his lack of official commenting on this case. I don't have a doubt that it's going to come out at some point soon. But what does this current silence say about the situation?
Well, I want to also ask a question out to the public as well. I mean, the thing is this, that they've homed in on Andrew. Are you telling me that Andrew is the only person that knew Epstein and his wife, etc.? I'm pretty certain when Epstein was high up in the sky, that even the King knew about it. Even his families knew about it. I mean, you can't just hide one guy. Andrew has really destroyed our royal family, I can say quite easily. The repercussions, and then to lie on top of it. Oh, I wasn't with him. I wasn't with any girls and all that stuff. You know, sometimes in life you've got to do what I call transparency, not secrecy. And in our country, out of all the countries and other countries in the world, all they have is secrecy, not transparency. Who are the people that suffer? Our communities, our public get to know last. I mean, with the sensitive UK trade reports of Jeffrey Epstein, I think I was on one of your shows where I believe that even he was told by Andrew that and others that there's going to be a bailout in the European Union, and information had passed hands at that time. Now the thing is that Andrew was in a very strong position with he was also, I believe, if I'm not wrong, and Jeffrey Epstein was also a UK trade envoy in 2010. So he had made very good friendships with Andrew, and that also went as far as Hong Kong, Singapore, and Vietnam. So the emails that have been released recently show that Andrews sent internal trip documents to Epstein shortly after receiving them. I mean, that had in itself triggered scrutiny from police, which raised fresh concerns about the misuse of official access. So whilst Prince William and Princess Kate are expressly deeply concerned, why are they only saying that now that they're deeply concerned? They've known about Epstein and Andrew's involvement in it. Why are they suddenly out of the blue saying, oh, we're deeply concerned? There's a lot more hidden here.
Shayan Batra, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you here on the programme. We now move from the United Kingdom and over to the Middle East, and Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, called on the people of Iran to share a strong message ahead of the 1979 Islamic Revolution anniversary. He reminded them that foreign powers, especially the United States, have always tried to bring back the old monarchy under Shah Reza Pahlavi. Khamenei explained that real strength doesn't come from military weapons like missiles or aircraft, but from the will and determination of the people. He encouraged citizens to show their unity and resilience once again against any foreign efforts which tries to weaken Iran's independence. Let's listen in to what the supreme leader said.
قدرت ملی بیش از اون که به موشک و هواپیما ارتباط داشته باشه به اراده ملت‌ها و ایستادگی ملت‌ها ارتباط پیدا میکنه. شما به الحمدلله ایستادگی رو نشان دادید و اراده خودتون رو نشان دادید در قضایای مختلف. باز هم نشان بدید، دشمن رو مایوس کنید. تا دشمن مایوس نشه در معرض آزار و اذیت قرار میگیرن یک ملت. باید دشمن رو مایوس کرد. مایوس بودن دشمن با اتحاد شماست، با قدرت فکر و اراده شماست، با انگیزه شماست، با ایستادگی در مقابل وسوسه های دشمن.
Mohammed Osman joins us now, a Middle East expert, joining us live from Cairo to discuss this further. Thank you so much for joining us. The anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution is coming up. Of course, over 30 years ago now, this of course happened. What does that signalling and communication say about what the Supreme Leader knows about his audience? What kind of effect is it going to have? Is there still a sense of pride in Iran when it comes to that, especially, of course, after this brutal crackdown on the protesters that has happened inside the country?
Thank you for having me, Thomas. Always a pleasure to be with you. So, of course, Iran now is preparing to celebrate its 46th or 47th anniversary of the revolution. So that's quite a long time. I'm not sure if it's 46 or 47. However, that's been over 4 decades now, nearly 5 decades, that the Islamic regime has been in power since the revolution of 1979. And of course, the Iran of 1979 and the Iran of 2026 are galaxies apart, Thomas, because the temperament back then, the general atmosphere, what the people were aspiring for, and the general mood in the street back in 1979 was that people wanted to overthrow the despotic Shah, despotic monarchy, and thousands of years of monarchic tradition. And eventually they embraced Ayatollah Khamenei back then as the leader of Iran, who would establish a new system of governance that will deliver on injustice in their own version of freedoms and on many other fronts. 46 years later, the regime didn't really deliver on most of these fronts and has been running basically a project of regional hegemony with a very sectarian religious dimension into it, or component in it, which basically has been a destabilizing factor in the region. So the people today are basically alienated and disenfranchised with what the regime has to offer. They do not really agree with the regime's foreign policy directions, and they do despise the idea that they have to suffer economically and domestically so that Iran can pursue, or the government can pursue, its adventures abroad. And this was one of the main drivers behind the latest wave of protests that were, of course, brutally put down. Not the first time that the Iranian government resorts to brute force to suppress demonstrations. However, this time was the most brutal of them all. At least 5,000 people died. Iran admits 3,000. Independent sources say 5,000 protesters died. Some sources indicate that it might be in the tens of thousands. However, those have never been verified. So Iran of 1979 is very different from the Iran that is preparing to celebrate, arguably to celebrate the 46th or 47th anniversary of the revolution. The regime will certainly celebrate. Its supporters, who are in the millions, will certainly celebrate. However, the Iranian people at large, 92 million people, I don't think this will happen.
The Ayatollah there speaking about foreign powers, especially the United States, according to him, vying to bring back the old monarchy. We saw Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, be a kind of, not icon, but rallying the people during those protests when they were happening. How much appetite is there in Iran to bring back that old system, and of course the presence of foreign actors, the likes of individuals who work for Israel in the United States? What's their presence inside the country like?
The supreme leader is right. This is not conspiracy theory talk. The United States and Israel do have a vested interest in toppling the regime in Iran. At least Israel does. The United States wants to subdue the regime and bend it to its will, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't mind removing it. And they are scheming through intelligence, through infiltration over years, not only in the latest round of unrest, to destabilize the regime in Iran and topple it. And now it's even threatened with an act of military aggression. So this is true. And of course, the Supreme Guide is using this international atmosphere of tension surrounding Iran in order to justify the government's iron grip and to rally the people around the flag, basically. And also, on the other hand, this idea of the Crown Prince coming back, and I don't think anyone really wants him to come back. I don't think the Iranians really want to replace the regime of the Ayatollahs with an Iranian Shah 2.0. I don't think that they want that. He has no grounds in the country. There are supporters of monarchy restoration. However, those are in a minority. I don't think they are beyond 10 to 15% of the population, according to experts I've spoken to, who are inside Iran. So I think that the idea that he's an icon or that he's a rallying symbol for the opposition is quite farcical, Thomas.
Mohammed, do stay with us. Of course, we'll continue to cover that ongoing situation inside Iran. As soon as we get those updates, we'll bring them straight to you. But we have some incoming news coming out of the United Kingdom once again. And in a new detail emerging from Downing Street, the UK Prime Minister's official spokesperson has said that Keir Starmer will not be resigning from his post and will be focusing on his job instead. The spokesperson has said that Starmer's mood was upbeat and he was confident in his role in navigating the ongoing political crisis due to Peter Mandelson's scandal. We'll bring you the updates coming out of that as well. We move on, and more from Middle East diplomacy. And the European Union, in a statement, has expressed its concern about the consequences of the Israeli military operation against armed groups in the refugee camps of the northern West Bank. The statement reads that the operation, ongoing for 40 days, has resulted in scores of casualties, the displacement of some 40,000 Palestinians from their homes, and the destruction of vital civilian infrastructure. The EU has also called on Israel, in addressing its security concerns in the occupied West Bank, to comply with its obligations under international humanitarian law by ensuring the protection of all civilians in military operations and allow the safe return of displaced persons to their homes. Further, in the statement, the EU said that extremist settler violence continues throughout the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and has urged Israel, as the occupying power, to protect civilians and to hold perpetrators accountable. The EU has also expressed concern over the increased number of checkpoints and tighter movement restrictions across the West Bank. The EU emphasised its commitment to the security of Israel and condemned all terrorist attacks or attempted terrorist attacks against Israel or Israeli citizens. A statement there coming out from the European Union in terms of Israel's actions inside the West Bank. Mohammed Osman joins us once again. We've heard this before. Your analysis on how the European tackles such issues in terms of both the West Bank, Gaza, of course balancing the tightrope when it comes to condemning, some would say, clearly illegal actions in occupied territories, to maintaining that that stance of wanting to keep relations friendly and strategically connected to the Israeli state. How is Israel going to respond to this, or is it going to respond to this?
Israel, of course, has been acting with impunity in the occupied Palestinian territories. It has been launching a war of genocide in Gaza for over 2 years now. Gaza is theoretically in a state of ceasefire where there's a cessation of hostilities. However, the killing still goes on a daily basis, and the destructions and the incursions and the further acquisition of land as Israel expands its zones into Gaza. The same applies in the West Bank, where a much more subtle campaign of displacement and relocation of civilians and ravaging and devastation of urban spaces where civilians live in the West Bank, with the goal of depopulating certain parts in order to pave the way for further settler expansion at this point. And as you might very well know, Thomas, this is not something new. This has been going on for years. The Europeans, of course, basically are doing a balancing act. Rhetoric without any substance, without any actual measures that should be taken to deal with such impunity and such irresponsible criminal behavior by the Israeli occupation. And the Israelis will respond as well with rhetoric. Netanyahu and the government will condemn the EU statement and tell them, you don't know what you're talking about, you're supporting terrorism, blah, blah, blah. However, at the end of the day, the Europeans, even though a genocide took place in Gaza and over 70,000 people were murdered, most of them civilians, they did not impose sanctions on Israel. They did not sever economic relations, and I do not expect them to do so over the West Bank.
Mohammed Osman, thank you so much for taking the time. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for joining us. We move on now, and 53 migrants, including 2 babies, are dead or missing after a large rubber dinghy capsized off the coast of Libya. According to the International Organization for Migration, the boat began taking on water 6 hours after setting off from Zawiya, a town in eastern Libya. The passengers, mostly migrants and refugees from several African countries, were attempting to cross to Europe. Libyan authorities rescued 2 Nigerian women, one of whom lost her husband and the other lost both her babies in the wreck. The IOM stated that many boats leave Libya heading for Italy, specifically the island of Lampedusa, though the open dinghies used for such journeys are unsuitable and unsafe. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.